Hello everyone, welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a weekly political news show. This week we aren't going to be talking about the news per se, not because there isn't anything to talk about, but of course I'd like to talk about some of the political strategy that Democrats should pursue in the midterms and the next presidential election. As always, please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. It is greatly appreciated, as well as sharing to your family and friends. Yes, we are already talking about the next presidential election. I hate being one of those people. I'd like to have a bit of a break, but when you're in this business, there really is no break. I already started seeing videos across the internet a couple of months ago about this, really as early as November. Often on YouTube in particular, you will hear about specific candidates and how effective they would at winning voters and things like that. That's not what we're going to do here. I'm not going to be talking about specific candidates. I'm not even going to be talking about Trump that much or J.D. Vance. Instead, I kind of want to provide a broad overview about the party itself, because a lot of people vote for the party, and I think that is what is most important at this given moment. So let's go back into history a bit here into 2008 and 2009, which was about 15 years ago. Isn't that crazy? Amid the Great Recession, Barack Obama swept to victory in 2008 with a large mandate to change the country. How did he do this? Well, there are two factors working in his favor. Firstly, Republicans had been in office for 8 years, and familiarity was breeding contempt. And that's something that you'll notice a lot in politics, is that when somebody is in office for a very long time, you get this. There's a sense that they're usually I think it's called like the 6-year itch in politics, where that just like in relationships, there's the 7-year itch, where a president becomes less popular in their 5th and 6th year in office. And that was definitely with the case of George W. Bush. Both the White House and Congress had endured numerous scandals, like Tom DeLay had a scandal. There was a scandal where a Republican congressman was like sexting an intern who was underage, or maybe he was just above age. Still shouldn't have been happening. There was also scandals with the Bush administration about, I believe, the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, as the casualties and the backlash from them were mounting. This meant even though it was John McCain running, unlike in 2004, being the continuity candidate was a huge problem. This meant Republicans really struggled to rally the troops to hit the streets during the 2008 election. And secondly, Democrats were united. In the 2008 primary, Hillary Clinton represented the establishment wing of the party, who supported the war in Iraq, while Barack Obama represented the more left-wing insurgent part of the party. Even though Obama won that primary, the party didn't fracture like you often see. When the primary is so bitterly divided, sometimes, like it was in 2016, sometimes you see the party fracture and they are not able to recover. And there's also the recession as well. That definitely hurt. That was probably a big factor in that. But I still would have said that Obama still would have won in 2008 if it wasn't for the recession. Obama's 8 years in office were quite uneventful, to say the truth. From 2009 until 2016, you started to see the seeds of populism as a response to the recession. On the right, there was the Tea Party, their Tea Party because they're not because they love tea, but because it stands for taxed enough already. On the left, you saw the Occupy Wall Street movement that occurred in the fall of 2011. However, the difference was that on the right, they were elected to office in the 2010 midterms, and they even took control of the House of Representatives, and then the Senate fell 4 years later. Left-wing populism, because they weren't the insurgents, they were insurgent, but they weren't, things were moving the other way, that eventually fizzled out. And it would feed into Bernie Sanders' run for the presidency in 2016 and 2020, but Bernie lost to the establishment in both of those elections, first to Hillary and then to Biden. When Trump entered office in 2017, the backlash was immense and deafening. In January 2017, there was the Women's March, the Me Too movement, which wasn't just political, but partly was, and record numbers of women were elected in 2018 to Congress. As a young person at that time, I remember it very well. It felt that from 2017 to about 2020, the left was insurgent nationally, both culturally and politically. You could feel it, you could see it, it was everywhere. And after Biden's election, it started to flip the other way. So why do I bring this all up? Well, we are in 2025, and Trump has entered office once again, but history is not repeating itself, and that is becoming more obvious. Why? Well, I'm going to get into that now. I will offer up some solutions and let you come up to your own conclusions, as well as share some of my own. There are arguably three camps of Democrats at this moment. There are the loud and angry Democrats who believe Trump should be opposed at every opportunity. And then there are the zero compromise, they are zero compromise. Then there are the quiet Democrats who are concerned that opposing Trump at every opportunity will wear down the public's nerves and eventually nobody will listen to them. There are Democrats like those Democrats are like Chuck Schumer, and that explains his recent capitulation to Republicans over a government spending bill 2 weeks ago, and I made a video about that. The third group are the people who have no idea what's going on, and we're not going to be focusing on them very much. As for polling shows a bit of a mixed bag politically. Democrats want their party to fight Trump more often. That is what the polling has said. However, Democrat voters alone are not enough to win an election, as we saw last year. Harris's campaign, one of the big themes of the campaign, other than saving democracy, which was very stupid, but putting that aside, one of her campaign things, and you saw it on signs all the time, was "When we vote, we win." Swing voters did not come out for Kamala Harris. She played a base campaign, and she blew it. You have to appeal to the base, yes, as I will talk about later, but attracting swing voters in a two-party system like this country is always key. You have to do it. For example, that is what Trump did. He pulled over former Democrats and minorities that would have normally voted for Harris and voted for Biden instead of just running a base campaign. The irony is Trump also ran a base campaign. There was really very little that was moderate about Trump's platform. Tariffs, mass deportations, upending transatlantic alliances, huge tax cuts. Those are not that really moderate policies. And most people in this country do not support those things. They do not support tariffs. They don't support illegal immigration, but they're not entirely in favor of mass deportation. And they do support our transatlantic alliances. And then in tax cuts, people support middle-class tax cuts, not wealthy tax cuts. Trump moved the Republican Party from the Bush-era centrist to a very populist right-wing party, and the problem for Democrats is at the same time he did not open up the center. Usually, when you have a two-party system, think of left-right on the political spectrum, and you have one of those parties, in this case Republicans, move to the right, they are abandoning a bunch of voters in the middle. And when you do that, that is where Democrats, they can move to the right a little bit and scoop up a lot of those voters without having to move it up to the right at all very often. But that didn't happen this time. Trump moved to the right, but Democrats were unable to pull in those extra votes because of this disaster that was the Biden administration. This not only allowed the Republican Party to become more populist and in some eyes extreme, that didn't provide the votes for Harris to win. And I don't think the Democrats' policies were necessarily the issue in the election. It was the messenger. Kamala was a terrible candidate, plain and simple. And this is coming from somebody who supported Hillary. She came from a terrible administration that oversaw crisis after crisis after crisis. Almost every month of the Biden administration was some sort of crisis. Now, I don't want to relitigate the 2024 election all over again, but instead I want to focus on the future. Polling suggests a plurality of Democratic voters want their party to move to the center. And this is at the same time where a plurality of Democratic voters want them to oppose Trump. So they have an interesting situation here where the voters want them to oppose Trump, but also move to the center. And I believe it is about 45%, and that's a plurality, and 22% of Democrats want the party to stay the same. So Democrats largely do not want the party to move to the left. This is a problem for the leadership because they can either move to the center and work with Republicans, or they could do what Republicans did to Obama, block and stall. Those are really the only options. It is notable that I've been told, I haven't looked into this myself, that blue dog Democrats did decently well during the election. And for example, House Democrats held on to almost all of their seats. In my personal opinion, there are aspects to quiet and loud Democrats that have it right. Loud Democrats are correct that Democrats need to provide a credible opposition to Donald Trump. They can't do what Schumer did and just capitulate. They can't just sit around and wait for Trump to become unpopular. They need to show that they are actually different and they have different policies. What the loud Democrats get wrong, in my opinion, is their focus. They focus on the wrong issues. They're focusing on issues that Trump is most popular for, instead of focusing on the issues that he is least popular on right now. economy, inflation, and international issues. Democrats need to show that they have a better plan on the economy and inflation, and they need to convince Americans that the international status quo prior to 2025 is the one that is worth defending. Attacking Trump on immigration and Doge is a terrible idea. He remains popular on immigration, that's the only issue where he has a positive approval rating, and most Americans want to cut the size of government. Instead, that is where they should work with Trump. On the other issues, they should oppose him. And also, the whole threat to democracy crap, nobody except left-wing people care about that. It's, as I said, boy who cries wolf. Constantly saying Trump is a threat to democracy is turning people off, including myself. So I believe they should move to the center. What would that look like? On the picture of the political spectrum, it goes left to right and up, but also up and down. One axis is economic issues, and the other is social issues. I don't think the Democrats' economic issues are the problem right now. It's Trump's that are the problem. That's what's unpopular. As I explained earlier, I think the Democrats are wildly out of kilter on social issues. With the exception of abortion and gay marriage, Democrats need to move to the center on trans issues. They need to fix their own blue state's homeless problem. The public doesn't really care that much about climate change, so they should probably move away from that. Racial justice, public doesn't care about that. They're even demolishing the Black Lives Matter plaza, and a lot of other issues in that sphere. And to be clear, though, I'm not advocating for a return to 1990s and 2000s era neoliberalism, which was, if you're not a political expert, neoliberalism was just a very merger of Republicans and Democrats. Democrats and Republicans at that time were very similar. They were very similar parties. For example, 2004, both Bush and Kerry supported the war in Iraq. And in the 1990s, Bob Dole and Bill Clinton were not that different. I don't think this is the way to go, because I would say that those seeds that were planted then are what we are experiencing now, without getting too much into it. That is my recommendation. Move to the center on social issues, but stay put or move to the left on economic issues. There are some people out there who would disagree. Perhaps you listening to that now, you disagree with me. Another option is to move to the left on all of the issues and play a base campaign like Trump did last time. The question is this base campaign going to attract swing voters? It's possible that Republicans could be so abhorrently awful in 2 to 4 years that a left-wing campaign succeeds. Or not. That remains to be seen. But what I am concerned is that if we have a Republican Party that moves to the right and a Democratic Party that moves to the left, there's going to be a lot of people in the middle who are dissatisfied. Just like there were people on the left and right who were dissatisfied when both parties moved to the center. So I would hate to see that happen. What do I think is going to happen instead? Well, knowing Democrats' history, I think they're going to go establishment. That's what they've always done. The Democratic Party is extremely institutional and establishment. Unfortunately for them, this is probably not a good idea. Their approval rating is very low. We're like rock bottom. It's 27 and 29% in different polls. And for context, that is just over half of the people that voted for Kamala. Think about that. The people that voted for Kamala, basically half of her own voters don't approve of the party. And this was 2 different polls, CNN and NBC. I believe we are already starting to see the signs of left-wing populism in the protests and deportations and the like. I also think that we need to reflect, by we I mean Democrats, need to reflect that despite blue states that are entirely controlled by Democrats, they have higher taxes and higher government spending, which is what they advocate on a national level, and people have been fleeing them. This is not an attack on Democrats. If you're a Democrat listening to this, I'm not attacking you personally. I'm just saying this is something that the party needs to think about. And the Republicans have their own issues. Perhaps I should make one about that. But with Democrats, people have been leaving New York, California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, and New Jersey. And why is that? Democrats need to think about why houses are more expensive in those states. The cost of living is higher in those states. Texas has more renewable energy than California. Public transportation outside of deep blue cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York are terrible. Why is that? If they can't fix that on a state level, how can they do it on a national level? They can't. The big problem that Democrats have faced really the last half century is that they don't do much. Democrats are very ideological. Maybe they should take a page out of Trump's playbook. offer simple, quick solutions that even if they aren't always achievable. I'm not saying they should, but that's a potential solution. You have to be careful because I still think this could blow up in Trump's face, but maybe that's something to think about. Biden had a lot of legislative accomplishments. That is true. But how has our lives improved in any way? Have they improved in the long term and not just short-term political gimmicks? They haven't. Democrats largely do nothing. So are Republicans, but as I said, we're not going to talk about them. Populism thrives when the establishment fails. The establishment has failed. That's what I believe, and that's what many Americans believe. Young people are particularly frustrated now, and I know that because I feel it myself, and many Americans feel it that way as well. That brings me to another problem, demographics. We are spending a lot of time talking about race and income during elections, but rarely do we mention sex. Trump suffered with women, but excelled with men, particularly in young men. Young college-age men, maybe from age 18, well, obviously, there are no Trump voters under 18 to like 35, maybe 30 to 35. Trump did very well there, just off the top of my head. And why is that? Well, people on the left say it's because Kamala was a woman. Oh, they didn't vote for him. They didn't vote for her because she was a woman. And that Trump's more masculine. I don't believe that, and I think that's a dangerous assumption because, one, that's insulting the voters that you want to win over, and in politics, you never tell the voters that they're wrong. Even if they are wrong, you don't ever say to the voters, you are wrong. And two, blaming your problems on sexism and racism not only doesn't solve the problem, it ignores the problem. Young men want change, and I'm not saying that women don't want change either, but young men in particular are drawn to Trump, and I'd argue it's because he has quick, easy solutions to change things, or so he says. Democrats need to win these young men back. They are going to struggle without them. Also, it's not healthy for a society to have two sexes that are on completely opposite ends of the political spectrum. Not a good thing. Not in this polarized world. Still have a lot to talk about. I know we're going to run over. I want to talk about how Democrats are doing now, despite all the doom and gloom that I've been saying this whole episode, from the press and the politicians and myself. They are doing quite well. There's a special election in Wisconsin for a Supreme Court seat in that state, and they look like they are going to win that seat very easily. Here at my home in Pennsylvania, there was a state Senate, I don't live in this district, but there was a state Senate seat that Democrats flipped from safe Republican to Democrat. This was a safe seat, not a swing seat. Under a normal environment, this would have been a cakewalk for Republicans. There was a 16-point swing. In a Senate district in Iowa, there was a 25-point swing. In Hawaii's 100th House district, there was a 24-point swing, although Democrats didn't end up flipping that seat. They got pretty close. They took an ultra-safe Republican seat and turned it into a swing district. There have been two districts, one in Delaware and one in Connecticut, where there's been a small swing the other way to Republicans, but they're in ultra-safe Democratic seats, and the Republican swings were only 2% and 6% respectively. Therefore, it appears to me that in safe Republican districts, Republican turnout is down and Democratic turnout is up. In Democratic district, Democratic turnout is about the same and Republican turnout is down. That's a sky-high view of what's going on. And this is important because there are two special elections in Florida's 1st and 6th congressional district. Those elections are on Tuesday, so we'll talk about them in the next episode. But they are a result of incumbents resigning their seats. Both of them are safe Republican seats. One is an ultra-safe seat in the Florida Panhandle, which is like basically, if you're in the Florida Panhandle, you're basically in Alabama. That is a ultra-safe seat. And that was Matt Gaetz' seat, the guy who was accused of having sex with minors. And the 6th district is north of Orlando and south of Gainesville. This is a largely rural seat, except for Daytona Beach and a few medium-sized towns around the end. This is still a safe seat, but if the Republicans had, they've been trailing in fundraising, and the early vote shows that Democrats have more energy. Even if they narrowly win the seat, Republicans narrowly win, they'll celebrate it, but the margin is critical, not just who wins. So much of my job as a political scientist and an election analyst is not just who wins, because that's easy. It's the margin that they win by, and by how much, and what swing it was from one party to the other. Democrats need a swing nationally next year of 1% to get to 218 House seats. That's just across the country. And that would be the House majority. If you're not familiar, 218 seats is how many you need to form a majority in this country. And if it is in the election next week, if it is a 5% swing to the Democrats, that would be a bruising, and it would show that Republicans need to retool and rethink, but that wouldn't be very bad. If it's a 5 to 10% swing, that would be pretty bad. There would be some red flags, and Republicans would need to rethink some of their strategy. If it's a 15% swing, that would be really, really bad. That would turn this from a safe Republican seat to a toss-up. They would still win, but it wouldn't be by much. And if it's a more than a 17-point swing, this would turn the district blue, and that would be a bloodbath. If Democrats actually win this seat, which is still very unlikely, and I don't think they will win, that would show that there's a bloodbath coming. And if you're a Democrat, you'll probably love to hear that. If you're a Republican, you're probably not super happy to hear about that. And it would show that Republicans need to change course. Additionally, Elise Stefanik's nomination as UN ambassador has been pulled because Republicans were concerned about their House majority. She is also in a safe seat. She's in a seat that is not quite as safe as the other two, but she won by, I think, 18%. So it would take almost a 9-point swing to flip the district, and they were concerned about losing it. What does that tell you? So how do we juxtapose this? Democrats on a national level are struggling to find a voice, but on the local level, they are not. The truth is, I don't really know. I think locally, Democrats can focus on issues that are pertinent to the local area and the campaign as a protest vote against Trump, but because that's how many of these people think it is. Many people don't treat local elections seriously. They just treat it as a way to punch the government in the nose and tell them to change. But in order to win a national election, they need to prove that they are a credible opposition, and that they need to show the country that they are a government in waiting. And clearly the public doesn't think that now. And the reason I know that now is because their approval rating is abysmal. And I think a good example of this was the 2022 midterms. Many Republicans acted as if they were going to cakewalk into victory. And to be fair, I thought they were too. Focusing on trans issues, blaming Biden for inflation, saying that Biden was attacking American energy, etc. They were clearly different from the Democrats. They made it clear they were different, but they were not offering an alternative vision for the country. And yes, they did win the House, but by the slimmest of margins, and the Senate was for the taking, and they didn't take it. So what am I saying now? What I'm saying is that Democrats need to find a way to transfer this local energy to national energy. Right now, I don't see that happening. Instead, they're doubling down on failed Biden-era policies. Tim Walz stated at a rally, quote, "We let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI. We let them define what woke is." And that's good. Acknowledging the problem. Your opponents have taken control of the narrative. That's never a good thing. Then he said, quote, "We have got into this mess because we were not bold enough to say, you're damn right, we are proud of these policies and we are going to put them in place and we're going to execute them," end quote. This is a terrible strategy. Yep, Governor Walz has clearly learned no lessons from the campaign that he was a large part of, and he was part of the reason that Democrats lost in the last election. The second most important issue of that campaign, immigration, they, instead of running from Biden's record, they're like, "Oh, no, we don't want anything to do with that. We're against illegal immigration. The American people are against it, and we as a Democratic Party, we are against it, and I as a politician am completely against it." That's what he should have said. But instead, he's now embracing it. Yes, we love illegal immigration. He didn't say that, but he's basically saying that. And I think it's clear that Democrats with that attitude will not be winning the next election. As for DEI and what woke is, that's really less important. But it appears to me that the culture has shifted on that. It's a slur now. Being called woke was once a good thing. "Oh, you're woke." Like, "Oh, you're okay." But no, that's not a good thing. If you're called woke, that's a slur. And there's a reason that being called a DEI hire is an insult and not a compliment. Democrats need to run from this, not embrace it. I'm surprised that the party is not agreeing with me. And It's not a shock considering the DNC race, they basically, that I covered a few weeks ago to become the new chair, they haven't learned any lessons either. As I said earlier, fighting Trump on immigration is not, or fighting Trump on illegal immigration is not a good idea. He remains popular on the issue, for now anyway, and if he becomes unpopular, then they could turn it around. But for now, they can and should criticize specific aspects of the Trump plan, but they should not defend illegal immigration. Nobody should be supporting illegal immigration. As I said earlier, I recommend moving to the right on some social issues. Abandon DEI, abandon wokeness. It's not popular anymore. I'd argue that it never was. It definitely isn't now. Instead, they should focus on the economy, inflation, and maybe foreign policy. I'll tell you as a swing voter, the only issue that I approve of the president on is immigration. For Democrats to win me over, and many other swing voters, they need to make their case on the economy. And that's really where it matters for me. That's pretty much all I have to say for this episode. Thank you for listening. This is open-ended, and I didn't mean to or want to provide concrete answers because I think there's a lot that could go either way. I have my preferred route, as I've said in this episode and previously, and I'm sure there are others out there that feel differently. Those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and hope you return next week. Bye-bye.